Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakio. I'd like to welcome you to the evening's Dharma Sunday. We attempted to do the live stream earlier today, but unfortunately we ran into some technical difficulties, so this will be the second transmission. Hopefully everything goes as expected. If this is your first time tuning in, Dharma Sunday is when I take real-world events that are happening and tie them in with canonical Buddhist teachings, trying to show the practical application of the Buddhist path. This evening, we'll be discussing an internet dust-up that happened between Demi Lovato and a frozen yogurt shop in LA called The Big Chill. Before we get into that, I'll remind you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, don't forget to hit the notification button. These teachings are offered free of charge, but if you'd like to make a contribution, information for PayPal and CashApp are in the description for this talk. And if you'd like to do a deep dive into Buddhist training, check out my book, Perfectly Ordinary Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life. There's a link to a sample chapter also in the description for this talk. And it's available anywhere books are sold. So before we really get into what happened with Demi Lovato and The Big Chill, I'll just read two articles that describe exactly what happened. The first is coming from People magazine. And People had this to say. One moment while I scroll up to the top. The title of the article is Demi Lovato addresses backlash to her comments about triggering visit to frozen yogurt shop. People with eating disorders should be able to go in and feel safe wherever they go to eat, said the singer, who has been open about her recovery. This article is written by Maria Pesquini. And Maria writes, Demi Lovato wants fans to understand her decision to speak out about a triggering and awful visit to a local frozen yogurt shop. On Monday, the Dancing with the Devil singer, 28, addressed the backlash to comments she originally made over the weekend about how she had an extremely hard time ordering froyo from a Los Angeles-based shop, The Big Chill, due to all the sugar-free and diet foods they offer. After the shop replied to Lovato explaining that some of their items are intended for diabetics, vegans, and people with celiac disease, Lovato continued to speak out about her experience, telling the shop to do better and find a way to provide an inviting environment for all people with different needs, including eating disorders. In the video uploaded on her Instagram account, on Monday, Lovato, who has long been open about her struggles with an eating disorder and body image, apologized for anybody she may have upset with her comments, adding that her message has gotten misconstrued. When I messaged this froyo place, originally I wanted to make a point and I wanted to call out behaviors or branding things that didn't sit right with me, she said. As someone who deals with an eating disorder and is in recovery from an eating disorder, I still to this day have a hard time walking into a froyo shop, ordering yogurt and being content with it and keeping it down. I know that seems like not a huge deal to a lot of people, but to me it is, she added. Lovato went on to explain that while she was in the store, it wasn't clear to her that all the diet and health food options were for specific health needs. I didn't know that, she said, because it wasn't clear. I definitely jumped to conclusions and probably shouldn't have gone about this the way that I have. But I'm willing to talk to this froyo shop to help get the message right. Opening up about why the experience had such an impact on her, Lovato shared that frozen yogurt was something she used to turn to because it was low in calories and it just felt safe to me. I know that people struggle with froyo with eating disorders, she said. That's why I'm super sensitive when I walk into a froyo place and I see diet stuff. This is a hard thing to live with on a daily basis, she continued. The thing about overcoming my addictions, my drug addictions, I can walk away from that, but I have to eat 3 times a day. This is something that will be with me for the rest of my life. I left that yogurt store and didn't get the yogurt that I wanted. Then I had a hard time the rest of the weekend, to be totally transparent. As her video came to a close, Lovato stressed that her intention was never to come after a small business as someone with a lot of followers. I walked into a situation that didn't sit right with me. My intuition said, speak up about this. So I did. And I feel good about that, she said. What I don't feel good about is some of the way it's been interpreted and how the message has gotten misconstrued. Again, Lovato emphasized that she's open to working with the frozen yogurt shop to help align the messaging to where I feel safe going in there. And I can eat that froyo that I went there for. People with eating disorders should be able to go in and feel safe wherever they go to eat. That's all I'm asking. Literally all I'm asking, she continued. If we can make this environment safer for everyone, including people that are in recovery from an eating disorder and just want a little froyo, if we can do that while also giving froyo to vegans and people with diabetes, let's go. I'm genuinely sorry that people took it the wrong way. I just get really passionate, she added. It's never coming out of a place of hate. It's always coming out of a place of love and trying to lift people up. I understand that I didn't lift the froyo place up, but I'm upset, and that's all that was. If you were and then it goes on to say, if you or someone you know is battling an eating disorder, please contact the National Eating Disorder Association, NEDA, at 1-800-931-2237 or go to nationaleatingdisorder.org. Okay, so essentially what's happening here is Demi Lovato is a pop star. She came to fame many years ago. She was on Barney and Friends. After that, she became a big star on Disney. So she was on movies like Camp Rock 2, The Final Jam, etc. And she did really well for herself. She went on to have a career as a pop star and as a musician. And she's been very transparent about the fact that she's had struggles in the past, struggles with addiction, struggles with eating disorders. She actually released a documentary several years ago, or maybe a couple of years ago, called Simply Complicated, where she talks about this in more detail. And what happened here is she went into a frozen yogurt shop and she felt triggered because there were food items there that said things like guilt-free, sugar-free, etc. And it took her to a bad place. So she messaged the froyo shop via her Instagram stories, which is a very public venue. I'll get into that later. Basically saying that this messaging was hurtful and that they needed to try and do better. They responded that they were trying to make food that was available to everyone, celiacs, vegans, people with diabetes, etc. And that's why they have things like the sugar-free option, the low-calorie option, etc. And they went back and forth for a while. And long story short, Demi got a lot of negative backlash. It essentially came off as a big celebrity trying to use all of her followers to attack this small woman-owned business. So that's where we are right now. So I'll read one more article so you can kind of get both sides of the issue, and I'll talk more about what this has to do with Buddhism, specifically the Buddhist teaching of right speech, and then also what Shantideva in The Way of the Bodhisattva said when he discussed, he didn't use the word triggers, but that's essentially what he was talking about. Now, what we do in Buddhism to work with our own triggers. I'll also discuss some triggers of my own that I'm struggling with. Now, for the second article, it comes from NBC News. And one moment. It was written by Tanya Russell. Tanya says, Demi Lovato's diet food attack went too far. We can't demand a trigger-free society. It's impossible to know what exactly will be a trigger to any given person, so it's only fair that our expectations match that reality. Tanya goes on, pop singer Demi Lovato committed an unforced error this week. She took her issues with diet culture stemming from her own eating disorder recovery out on an unsuspecting frozen yogurt spot. After walking in and seeing food labels that triggered her, she waged a social media war against the small, woman-owned business, branding them as diet culture vultures for their labels for sugar-free cookies and other diet foods. Lovato's emotional reaction to being triggered, often a sinking feeling of dread accompanied by fear or sadness, and a desire to flee the stimulus is common for people in recovery. As I have found myself, though the size of her platform made her outward behavior more egregious, she acted as though she's owed a trigger-free society when she isn't. Support for people recovering from eating disorders is an important goal, and increasing awareness about what things can be triggering is key to reaching it. But that doesn't mean giving a license to bully those who don't comply. Ultimately, it's up to each of us to take responsibility for staying on track with our own progress. The point was driven home by the circumstances I found myself in when I heard about the Lovato dust-up. I was at that very moment battling my own triggers. I happened to be at a physical therapy for a recent hamstring strain when my physical therapist told me the elliptical machine would be my prescribed form of cardio until my hamstring healed. My response was, as much as I want, with the look of a child who has just been told they could have ice cream before dinner. Getting the green light to do a form of cardio that has no purpose beyond burning calories got me for a second. I felt like I'd been given a permission to indulge in my own way, and then I was taken aback by my response. It wasn't a healthy one. Someone with a normal relationship to exercise wouldn't have given the personal trainer's recommendation about the elliptical a second thought. But my reaction was my problem alone, and it wouldn't make sense to bring it to my personal trainer's attention. Most people can use the elliptical with no qualms. They can endure a work conversation about the keto diet. They can order from a restaurant despite the calorie counts being listed. It's impossible to know what exactly will be a trigger to any given person. So it's only fair that our expectations match that reality. It's true that diet culture is insidious, but that doesn't always mean any presentation of diet-oriented information is problematic. After all, there are individuals who don't seek out sugar-free, gluten-free, or vegan options simply because they want to be the smallest person in the room. There are medical and ethical concerns that prevent many from consuming the standard froyo. While 9% of the US population has an eating disorder, 1% has celiac disease, 10.5% has diabetes, and between 30 million and 50 million Americans are lactose intolerant. Veganism is growing in popularity, and there are individuals who try to lower their carbon footprint by choosing plant-based diets or plant-based items. Lovato's eating disorder may be so loud that, or Lovato's eating disorder voice, may be so loud that it drowns out other people's needs. Lovato wants to speak out about the problems with diet culture. Targeting a single business is the wrong approach. It's better to call out the swarm of real diet culture vultures, celebrities and influencers who only show themselves when they're eating with restraint, not when they go heavy on the sprinkles or treat themselves to a full fat cone. There are almost certainly people as famous as she who make money promoting diet products they don't even use. While Lovato blundered, attacking her can be just as problematic. She's still someone trying to overcome a mental health crisis. An onslaught of tweets have ridiculed her, including ones that criticize her for being body positive, encouraging others to love themselves no matter their size, yet still having insecurities. It isn't hypocritical for people to post perfected photos of themselves at the same time they talk about loving themselves, especially since someone in recovery may have a distorted view of self, and recovery itself is not linear. Also, rants like TV personality Piers Morgan's about being triggered don't harm a big star like Lovato as much as everyday people who suffer through their own triggers in silence, out of fear of ridicule. Eating disorders like depression and anxiety are serious mental health concerns that need to be treated with care and compassion. Eating disorders are complicated and soul-sucking for those of us who battle them. And that strife doesn't end the second we start on the path to recovery. The magnitude of these disorders may not be fully known to the rest of society, but everyone does know that internet bullying can do, or what internet bullying can do, whether the recipient is a small business or a celebrity constantly under public scrutiny. So that's what NBC News had to say. And I think it's telling. I think this situation is complicated. I think it's important we don't make light of the fact that Demi, like many people in the world, has triggers, that she has things that make her uncomfortable, that take her back to a place of trauma. And just so we're on the same page, I did pull up a definition of what it means a trigger is in mental health. And this is coming from healthline.com. In mental health terms, a trigger refers to something that affects your emotional state, often significantly, by causing extreme overwhelm or distress. A trigger affects your ability to remain present in the moment. It may bring up specific thought patterns or influence your behavior. So I have no trouble believing that Demi walked into this frozen yogurt spot and she was triggered as someone who has eating disorders. And again, I don't think we should make light of that. I personally suffered from a number of triggers due to my time spent overseas with the Marine Corps. So one of my triggers, and this is something talking to veterans that a lot of us deal with, is I can't have my back to a door. It doesn't work. Like, the only reason this door can be behind me right now is because I can see it on the camera. I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. I get very anxious, very angry. So I always need to be in a place where I can see all the entrances and exits in a room. Another trigger that I deal with is trash, believe it or not. So when I was overseas, improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were a thing. And they were often hidden by insurgents in piles of garbage, piles of trash. So something that was drilled into us, something that we were trained to look out for, was garbage on the side of the road. And that training, that feeling of threat, didn't go away when I came home. So even now, all these many years later, if I'm driving down the road and someone has their garbage out on the side of the road, I give it a second look. I feel my heart get a little faster. That's a trigger for me. So again, triggers are real. We need to take them seriously. However, how we deal with those triggers is also something that needs to be taken seriously. So while garbage and doors can be triggering for me, it'd be very strange for me to go up to my neighbors and say, hey, please don't put your garbage out on the curb. It bothers me. I don't have that right. Even though my problems are legitimate, I have to work with them in a way that's respectful to other people. And the same is true of Demi as well. Her problems are 100% legitimate. I 100% believe she did this with the best of intentions, but the way it comes off, as it was referenced in the article, is a big-time celebrity attacking a small business with their swarm of followers. And that's not something that's helpful for anyone. And that goes back to the Buddhist teaching of right speech. And right speech is important. It's the third tenet of the Noble Eightfold Path. But what's interesting, it's the first tenet of all the moral teachings of Buddhism. And it comes even before the meditative teachings of Buddhism as well. So before we talk about right action, before we talk about right livelihood, before we talk about mindfulness and meditation, we talk about right speech in Buddhism, because it's so important to get the messaging right, to deliver anything, whether it's a conversation about diet culture, whether it's a conversation about the Dharma, in a way that is beneficial for ourselves and other people. Now, the simplest way we can understand the Buddhist teaching of right speech is that our speech has to be delivered in such a way that either adds joy or removes suffering for ourselves or other people. So we can have the best of intentions, but if we are calling people dirty names, if we're trying to attack them with our followers or putting them in a position where they look like the enemy when they're not, even though our intentions are good, we're not utilizing right speech. The Buddha talks about this in another way as well when he says in the Pali Canon, "And what is right speech? Abstaining from lying, from divisive speech, from abusive speech, and idle chatter. That is called right speech." So again, our speech shouldn't be divisive. It shouldn't be abusive. It shouldn't be idle. And the way this came across, it was divisive. It felt like Demi was attacking this frozen yogurt shop. And if you look at the Instagram story, it almost seems like she was encouraging her followers to do the same. She even said at one point, "I'm going to make this hashtag diet culture vultures a thing. So not helpful. That being said, I do like the fact that she said that she apologized. She did say she's willing to work with them to try to get the messaging right. So it does seem like she recognizes that she had a misstep here and she's trying to make it right, which I think is important. It's okay to make mistakes in Buddhism as long as we come back and we try to fix them later, which is exactly what she's doing. And I think that's admirable. I think another thing we should look at here, however, is what Buddhism teaches about dealing with our triggers. And this is something that's been very powerful in my own life, because there was a time when I felt that the world was responsible for catering to me and my issues and my triggers, whatever they may be. So if someone did something that triggered me, I got angry at them because they should know better, they should do better. How dare they not be able to read my mind, essentially. However, if we read The Way of the Bodhisattva, which is a text written by Shantideva, he gives a slightly different teaching, which I think is helpful, was very helpful for me, and I think it'd be helpful for anyone in this situation. And I'm paraphrasing the teaching here, but he essentially talks about our mind and things that cause harm. And he essentially uses the metaphor of the earth and walking barefoot on the earth, and how there are two ways we can do that. We can cover the world in soft leather so that we never step on anything, no piece of glass, no stick, no rock that causes harm to us. Or we can cover our minds in soft leather, cover our feet in soft leather, otherwise wear shoes. That way we can walk wherever we want, which is simpler. To make the world bend to our will and to our demands, or to simply wear shoes so that we can walk wherever we want to go into every situation expecting people and places and things to cater to us, or to prepare our minds and train our minds in such a way that we can go into any situation and know how to cope with it. Now, this is not an either or scenario. We can do both. We have two hands in Buddhism for a reason. We can speak up and advocate for ourselves and discuss with other people, hey, I don't like when you do that. This is why. Can we maybe change it and work together to fix this? Which, again, sounds like something that now Demi is working to do. But at the same time, we also work to train our minds so that we can cope skillfully with anything that happens. And that's something that I've done with my own triggers. So if I'm in a restaurant, let's say, and I know that I should ask to be put in a booth and not a table, because generally booths are on the side and you can kind of see what's going on. Oftentimes you're in a corner, so that personally makes me feel safe. I don't need to make a big deal out of it. It's not a big show. I just, hostess asks where I want to sit. I say, can we have a booth, please? On the other hand, however, if I am in a situation where I can't see all the exits, the only thing there is a table, or if I'm driving down the street and there's lots of trash lined up, then Buddhism has given me the tools, primarily in meditative breathing, that helps me break out of that fight, flight, or freeze response that often comes with triggers, and I'm able to simply live my life. The world doesn't change, but my mind changes. So the tools that Buddhism gives us to deal with our triggers are very simple. Meditation, sutra study, prostrations, chanting, things that people like the Buddha, people like Shantideva, people like Dogen, people like Shinran have been using for 2,600 years effectively to work with the harmful things they come into in the world. And we can use these tools as well, even as we speak up for ourselves and advocate for a kinder, gentler world. So that's what I'd like to put forth, that while we should advocate for ourselves, we also have to accept the fact that the world is not always going to be the way we want. And we have to have the tools to work with the world when it's not that way. And Buddhism allows us to do that through chanting, through meditation, through prostrations, through sutra study. So let's do that. And let's not jump into people's Instagram stories quite so often. Amitabha. So again, thank you for joining me for Dharma Sunday. If this is your first time joining me for this talk or this evening, what's going to happen now is we're going to move into the Q&A portion of this evening. So if you have comments, questions, concerns about Buddhism, about the articles I read, just things you'd like to share with the Sangha in general, you can do that in the live chat. Just put your comments in there. I'll be sure to respond. And while we're waiting for those to come in, I'll make a few announcements. So like I said, this is Dharma Sunday. We do it every Sunday. It's live streamed at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. It was a little late today because we had some technical issues. The stream went out, so we had to start again. And this consists of a Dharma talk tied to real world events, kind of a practical applications type thing. And then we have a Q&A. On Wednesdays, we do meditation and sutra study, which is a little bit more involved. That involves a 15-minute guided meditation, followed by a reading from a sutra. Then we have a Dharma talk, and that's also followed by a Q&A. These teachings are offered at free of charge, but if you'd like to make a contribution, information for PayPal and CashApp can be found in the description for this talk. So, do we have any questions, comments, concerns before we end this evening? Okay, well, it looks like that's it. Thanks again so much for joining me. Amitabha. Until next time.